Hey guys, today we're going to be installing the tank machine plate. Now this goes where the subframe is removed from the bobber. Now if you've watched my previous videos, you'll know that I fabricated a piece to cover where the subframe was because I didn't want to bite the bullet and spend the money. Well, I got bored and decided that I wanted to do this. So this is the tank machine plate. There you go right there. Tank Machine is a company in France that makes some really cool accessories for your bikes. So check them out, tankmachine.com. I get a lot of questions on how did I mount my tail lights and my plate. So as I install this, you're gonna see that process. So without further ado, here we go. Okay, so instead of removing the two lights from the plate, I'm gonna use a different tactic, and I'm actually gonna remove the 13mm bolts, which are holding my license plate bracket that I fabricated onto the lower portion or the bar that goes across the 1920 Solo saddle seat. So I'll remove those right now. And I'm putting the 13mm open end wrench on the top and then the bolts on the bottom. And there's so much limited space, so there's only really enough room for like 4 turns. And then it's just finally gonna drop off, and then I'll just retrieve the nuts on here. And I'll do the same on this side. As you can see, the whole light assembly is rotating, and you're gonna get to see how I made this here in just a second. All right, guys, let's start with the bracket that you guys talk about or ask me about a lot. Right here, this was part of a TV wall mount. Now, as you can see, there were already holes in here, and as you can see, I just bored them out because I needed to match up the holes right here. So if you have something, just bored out. And again, you can buy just a flat piece of metal from Lowe's and just drill your holes, mark them out, and then paint it black. And all I did was on the ends there, you can see all I did was put it in a vise and bend it. There's the factory screw right there from when the lights came off the fender. So again, just a piece of straight metal, bent at 90 degrees. If the holes don't match up, just bore them out. It's gonna be covered up anyway, so you're not gonna see that. And when you remove your rear fender from your subframe, the wires right here, they're just gonna run along the channel of the subframe. And then there's just a wiring harness in here they're gonna unclip. We'll probably be able to get to see that here also. The 4 bolts that you're looking at here is where the subframe was removed. So let's talk about how I did the license plate. All right, if I can get this out of the way here. This metal bracket right here is a junction box from Lowe's, an electrical junction box. I just cut the ends off. I think these holes were already here, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember. It was already at a 90-degree angle. And so again, all I had to do was line up holes, drill holes, and line up to go under the seat right there. And then as far as the way the light is mounted, as you can see, all it is, I've got a large washer and the light is wedged over the plate. And there's a couple of little locking nuts holding it on, so that I didn't have to drill holes through the plate. So hopefully you guys see how that's mounted. Oh, you're probably gonna ask, well, how's that junction box mounted to the plate? Well, it's just a little bit of JB Weld. And someone commented on one of my videos, oh, as soon as he mentioned JB Weld, I quit watching. Guys, JB Weld, you're not gonna put your frame together or glue a wheel back together with JB Weld. But if it's something like a license plate, which has almost no weight to it at all, it's perfectly fine. It's not gonna go anywhere. It's not gonna fall off. Just make sure you clean and prep your surfaces. Don't JB weld anything that's painted. You have to use bare metal for proper adhesion. So that's how I mounted that. Now with this gently rested out the side here, we're gonna remove the hex head bolts. There's one here and there's one right there. And then the seat will come off and we'll go to the next step. Okay, now using a 6mm Allen wrench, you're gonna remove the 2 screws on each side and it will release the seat from the frame that the seat is mounted on. As you can see, just a little rounded hex head there. When you remove the second one, there is a notch at the front of the seat where the seat goes in first. So you'll put the notch in first. When you put the seat back on, you'll put the notch in first and then lower it down and put the screws back in. So I'm gonna lift up on it and then pull it back. Let's see if we can get a shot of this. There's the notch I was talking about right there. So you feed that in first. Now you'll see the frame right here, and that's just held on with 4 bolts, which I'll show you here in a second. You'll notice the back bolts right here, they are much longer than the front ones. So when you're reinstalling, just pay attention. The short ones go towards the tank, the long ones towards the rear. And then you want to hold the plate, or the support frame rather, when you take out the last one, because it does have a little bit of weight to it. You don't want it to fall, scratch something on your bike. All right, once you get the frame off, on your bike, if you have the solo saddle seat, you're gonna have a large hex head right here with a washer on it. Apparently, unbeknownst to me, I forgot to put it on. All it does is hold this middle part down. As you can see, if you lift up, the bracket was holding this down, and it's also secured under the tank. But there's also these 2 right here. These are a 5mm hex head. I already broke them loose. Yours will not have that little gasket around it. I had to fabricate that to make my shut-off plate or my block-off plate work. So I'll show you that here in a second. And at this point, in order to remove this, you're gonna lift up on your tank on either side, just right here. Lift up. As you can see, the tank is coming up, and then it just pops out. You see these little clips on the end. The next part I'm gonna show you is really important. All right, this is the one I took off. Notice how it's shaped. This is the one you're gonna need. You see how this one is raised, and this one is recessed. You need the recessed one because it matches the contour of the plate that we're gonna put on there from Tank Machine. Now this one right here, you can get from cheapcycleparts.com. Now they sell the OEM parts for all kinds of bikes. And this particular plate right here came from the 2020 Indian Scout 1200 Anniversary Edition. So I was nice enough to look up the part number for you. So if you go to cheapcycleparts.com, the part number is 5452434. You're gonna need this if you are gonna install the Tank Machine plate. All right, just for better clarification, here's the plate. Here's the one we took off. As you can see, if we line that up there, you see that big gap you're gonna have? All right, now I'm gonna show you the one that I was just talking about, and boom, that is why you need that plate. Okay, so once this plate's removed, when I made my fabricated plate right here, I put some of this under there, and that was just to protect the battery. And this is just toolbox liner. So I had that tucked in there so to give it some sort of protection against the weather, rain, etc. Did it help? Well, apparently it did. But what's important now is I have to retrieve this metal piece. This is a bracket that's going to be on your bike. It's not going to be in this position on your bike because I rotated it, flipped it upside down, and glued it on here with JB Weld. Once again, there's no weight on it, so JBL worked. Instead of buying a new bracket, I'm going to have to pause the video, remove this, clean it up, because this is going to attach to that tank machine bracket. The reason why it attaches there, because it allows the two rear screws here to go into these positions, but this needs to be flipped over. You'll see shortly what I'm talking about. All right, guys, as you can see, I removed that bracket from here, and now we're gonna remove the 4 17mm bolts that are right here. You can use a ratchet on the top, but with the 240, or even if you're putting the 240 on with your regular 150 rear tire, you're probably going to need just an open end wrench or a box wrench on the bottom, but it's a 17mm. Okay, so this is the subframe plate that I made. Just bent it at 90 degrees, drilled holes in the back, and I mounted an LED light on there. And the reason for that is because, remember from my previous videos, I had made that plate with the Indian logo out of a piece of Lexan, and so that would light up at nighttime. But let's take a look at what you're looking at when everything's removed. You see you've got your battery and all your wire harnesses, and of course the reason why we put the plate on there when we do the 240 or the fender delete is that we don't want all that exposed. So my taillights originally were all the way back here because they were mounted to the subframe and the fender. And the wires for these taillights, guys, are super thick. The sheeting, rather, is super thick. So you're not going to be able to bunch it up. If you are, then you're going to have a hard time doing it. So you can see I cut it here. They are soldered together, and I didn't have any heat shrink at the time, so I used electrical tape. But let's show you the harness connectors. This little push pin connector, that's for your tag light. And then if we go down here, these are for your tail lights. So these are real easily accessible. If you're gonna do a modification to the rear fender, it's real self-explanatory, just regular old harnesses that clip in there. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and mount the tank machine subframe right there. Okay, so the tank machine plate is gonna come with these tapered with a little hex Allen wrench hole in there, and that's a 6 mil. So we're going to install all 4 of these right now. Just keep in mind, guys, when you're putting these screws in, if they don't go in the first few threads immediately, just stop, back them out, and try again. So I'm just gonna pause the video right now. I'm just gonna go ahead and tighten those up because you'll be bored to death watching me wrench on this thing. Okay, so the subframe plate from Tank Machine is installed with the 4 bolts. I slid this back in just by lifting the tank. But as you can see right here, when we try to push this down, it'll pop into place, but we've got a little bit of obstruction here. So obviously we're not going to cut into this plate, we're going to cut into this, and we're just going to put a little arch in there to clear these wires. So you want to check for clearance on both sides. All right, one of the most handy tools you can have, get one, Dremel. Here we go. Just got a little sanding disc on it. We're just gonna round out this section right here. Just make sure that when you do that, that plastic that you just melted away is super hot. And see, that's all we did. We just put a little circular notch in there to clear the wires. So to install this, we'll just lift the front of the tank slightly. Place that underneath the tank, let it drop down, and then okay, so it doesn't quite lay down flat on the other side, so we're gonna do the same thing. All right, so notched out the other side. So as you can see, both sides are notched out. See that? Okay, again, we'll lift the tank slightly, just about an inch. And then everything should just tuck right in there. And it does. Perfect. Okay guys, so here's where I have to get a little bit creative. There was a little hole back here that mounts a bracket so we can attach the two bolts here, and that stops this from lifting up and down. Oh, by the way, I did find that washer was in a parts bin that I had, so I put that back on. Anyway, before I got sidetracked there, this is not gonna work. Remember, this is the bracket that I removed. So essentially, this hole right here has to go into the little screw right there. So if you visualize that, those top holes there are nowhere near these bottom ones. So take a look at this, and I'm gonna fabricate it to make it work. So I'm just gonna start chopping, cutting, bending in a vise. You'll just have to visualize it. It'll take me too long. Anyway, that's what I'll be showing you next. Okay guys, so a little of a change of plan here. The bracket that I started cutting on, I realized that, you know, rather than spend a bunch of time making something, I found the part that I'm gonna need. This hole right here is supposed to go in there on the tank machine plate. And once it's mounted in there, we can mount that top plastic plate to these two holes. But I just ordered the part instead. So I ordered the replacement bracket for this that actually fits that top cover. If you're gonna order that part rather than fabricate it, that part number from cheapcycles.com is part number 5264856. So right now I'm just gonna put everything back together so you can see what I'm doing. You're gonna wanna make sure that you've tucked all your excess wires back behind there before putting that plate back on. Okay guys, so I'm gonna put the support frame for the seat back on. So we're just gonna sit it in place. You can see that I did put that bolt back in there with the washer on that I had missing when I took the bike apart. So we're just gonna sit it in there. And remember, we've got 4 of these hex heads. And remember, we put the tall ones in the rear. And that's because the frame is thicker on this back portion. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hand tighten those, get them started. And like I said, I'm gonna put the whole bike, not the whole bike, the whole seat and back portion here back together, but I'm gonna have to wait for that bracket to come in that I ordered, which is gonna secure the plastic part underneath into place properly. So I guess just use your imagination for that part. All right, and the the next part, what I'll do is just go ahead and put the seat back on and then put the light frame or the bracket with the lights on it on there. Okay, so remember there's a little notch right here where that feeds in first towards the tank. So you want to just make sure that that sits in there properly and then lower the back down and then just put those back up onto the seat. And again, that's the 6mm hex or Allen wrench. So just tighten those down on both sides, and then we will get the license plate frame and the tail lights put back in place. So I'll pause it while I retrieve that. Okay, so this next part's a real pain. So basically, I got the bracket right here with the lights on it. I'm gonna put the license plate frame or bracket on top of the light bracket. And then I'm gonna put the 13mm bolt up through the seat bracket and then put that on top. And there's very little room to work here. And like I said, it's ridiculously tight. And of course it doesn't want to cooperate, per usual. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the washer that's underneath to give me a little more thread. That'll work. Let's give it a shot. There, so you see it's mounted on one side. I just had to remove the washer because I had barely any threads to work with. So I'll do the same thing here in a second. All right, this is what I was referring to. If you look right here, you see how close that nut is to the top of the seat? There's barely any clearance. So anyway, the bolt goes up through the seat bracket and then the nut goes down on top of it. I'll get the other side done and then I'll tuck the wires in. The wires right here. I'm going to tuck as much as I can in between the plastic plate and the tank machine plate to clean it up. All right guys, so here's the finished product. Again, I still have to put that bracket on the plastic part under the seat, but it's just a lot cleaner and I have more space than I had before under here. And again, this tank machine piece is really clean. We can see under here. Again, I'll have the piece that will secure that down. And when that is secure, this is going to sit completely flat like that. See how it's raised up a little bit? So that bracket that I put on the tank machine plate will hold that down. But other than that, that's it. Guys, if you like the videos I'm putting out, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and the next video I plan on doing will be a riding video with a real microphone per request and with no music in the background. Imagine that. So hope you enjoy. Thanks again. Take care.